I'm Nick Altmeyer of linkinglewiscounty.com. We're here this morning at the Lewis County Courthouse with Lewis County Manager Ryan Piche, and we're bringing back our our monthly sit-down that we do before the monthly Board of Legislators meeting, which is taking place tomorrow night. So we haven't done this in a few months. I think we had some scheduling conflicts a few times, and we were just kind of giving some previews beforehand, but thought it was important to get back to this.
Sure.
And I know that you see the value in letting the public know what's going on as well prior
Absolutely.
to the meeting. So we always try to encourage attendance at the meeting. So the June meeting is taking place tomorrow, which is June 4th.
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yes.
It was an eventful weekend. We had a lot of events packed into the weekend, so I got a little
Community
behind,
Cup.
So. Yep, Community Cup. We had Relay for Life. A lot going on this weekend. So, but anyway, meeting is June 4th, and that's right here at the courthouse, second floor, legislative chamber. So everything gets underway at 5 p.m. So we're just going to run through some of the agenda items for this month. So we'll take them in order of what they are in the resolution packet. So.
Sure.
First one we have is setting a date for a public hearing for the July 2nd meeting, and that's for a new local law providing for installment payments at real property taxes.
Yes.
So that's kind of a big deal for community members, so I wanted you to get into that a little bit, what that
Absolutely.
program is.
So what this resolution does is it sets a public hearing for the July meeting, which still gives us some time to work out the details of this new policy initiative. But what the legislators are trying to do is set up a system where we can have installments for your property tax bill, basically. Right now, the way it works is you receive your bill in January and you have one solid date, one time, where all the money is due at once. A lot of our neighboring communities have created a system where that payment is allowed to be spread out to 2 or 3 payments. And we are looking to replicate that here in Lewis County. So there's been discussion among board members. We have to work with the town tax collectors to come up with some of the policy specifics. But by the July 2nd meeting, we should have a lot of those specifics worked out. And hopefully, if we can come to some conclusions, when you get your bill in January of 2020, you'll have the option of some installments that could help, spread out the burden of that bill coming due all at the same time.
Right. And I know some of the concerns were people on fixed incomes, things like that. It just makes it a little bit easier sometimes if they can spread it out over a period of time instead of having it all due at one date in March or whatever it is.
Yep. Fixed incomes. The agricultural community. That's a lot of a lot of land that a lot of these farmers have under their their ownership. So just giving them the option to spread that out and might help people out a little bit. And so maybe some people won't take advantage of it, but having the option may be good for some people.
And it's kind of a big undertaking, more so in the fact of just making a decision, okay, we're going to accept payments, because then you have to install various software and figure out how you keep track of the payments and things like that.
So we would have to we'd have to get each of the towns to buy in, at least the ones that want to participate. Not every town would have to. And the towns that do want to participate would have to adopt software that would work with the county software, work together. And the other positive thing is if your towns don't already offer online payment, then the new software that we're looking to install would allow that option. So it's kind of a full system revamp for some of our towns in terms of the way we collect taxes. But it's a good initiative. It's a modern initiative, something that's probably we should have been doing for a while. So hopefully by July 2nd, the legislators will have had the opportunity to make some of these decisions and have further discussion.
So even if this local law does pass, it doesn't mean that everyone's particular town would be participating. So it would be installments would be available for your county property taxes, and then your town and village taxes you might not have the installment option.
Right. It'll be up to the towns. Well, even for the county tax, right now it's collected by the town. So it would be on a town by town basis.
Okay.
We feel that the county is going to put up the capital expense. At least that's been the discussion so far. Of if it requires a new computer, a new software, the county is willing to help with those expenses. So we're hopeful that a majority of the towns will want to get on board with this.
Okay.
So
Perfect. So if anybody wants to be heard on that or has any comments on that, July 2nd meeting
July
is the
2nd,
date.
yeah. So we have to set the public hearing in June because it's a local law change. So you know how that it just takes a little extra time.
Yep.
So even though all the details aren't worked out yet, we have to set the public hearing now. By the July 2nd meeting, we should have all those details in place, and then we can hear from people at that time.
Perfect. Okay. Resolution 172 is going to be adopting the standing rules of the legislative committees. Back in January, we started a new committee process. So used to be that probably, what was there, 8 or 9 different committees?
We had 9 committees.
9 committees
Yep,
that
9
met
committees.
throughout
On
the
a monthly
month.
basis.
So usually on separate days, and it was spread out all through the month. And then in January, you guys switched to condensed everything down into 3 committees.
Yep.
And then all 3 committees meet on the same day, which is the 3rd Tuesday of the month. And it kind of extends from the afternoon throughout the evening.
Depending on what's on the agenda. Yeah.
Right. So pretty much had good success with the new committee structure, and it was on a trial basis. So
Yep.
this resolution here is just to extend that onto a more permanent basis.
Correct. So as Nick mentioned, for many years we had the legislators, as you know, the day-to-day work is broken into committees, done by committee and jurisdictional committees. We typically had 9 committees that were spaced out, across different times in the month, and each committee only had 3 legislators on it. So the goal of switching to 3 committees with 5 legislators on each committee was to, and having them all on the same day, was to allow all the legislators to receive all the information. So, if you were not on the highway committee before, then you maybe didn't get a lot of the detailed highway information. Now it's 5 people get to receive that information directly, and since it's on the same day and back to back as the other 2 committees, then there's an opportunity for everybody to receive that information and be informed. So we did it as a trial basis in January, knowing that we'd have to work out some kinks, and we've decided, I should say the board has decided that they like the new format enough to keep it going on a permanent basis. So we have to change the local law. All that is governed by local law, actually. So we have to amend the local law to make it permanent.
Okay. So the 3 committees are
General Services Committee, which includes everything from the Sheriff's Department to Highway to solid waste, anything that we would consider a general, a general service. Then we have Health and Human Services, which is going to be your hospital, public health, social services, veterans affairs, anything that's related to the health and human aspect of the county's departments, that is under Health and Human Services. And then we have Finance and Rules Committee, which has the budget and some of the human resources policies, and also the rules themselves. It's that committee that puts forward resolutions like this to change or amend the rules in any way.
Okay. So, and as you said, the 3 committees now meet back to back to back, and that's on the 3rd Tuesday of the month.
Correct.
And the first committee kicks off at
1 o'clock. The new standing rules are backing it up to 1. So
Okay.
we go. General Services will be from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. From 3 o'clock to 4, Health and Human Services will meet, and then from 4 o'clock until they're finished, Finance and Rules.
Okay. Perfect. So, and those meetings are just as open to the public as the
Yes.
monthly legislative meeting?
Yep. Yes, they are.
Okay. Perfect. Next we have, obviously there's more, a lot of the resolutions are just general business keeping that happen on a monthly basis and things like that. So when you hear the numbers skipping around, that there are resolutions in between, but
Right.
they're
less exciting.
they're less exciting. Yeah. Resolution 176, though, I think this came up last month as well, is the state mandated increase to the
Yeah.
district attorney's salary. This is the third one since 2016.
Yeah, in 2015, the state legislature tied the salary of county district attorneys to the state Supreme Court judge salary.
Okay.
So every time there's an increase in the state Supreme Court judge salary, it indicates a mandatory increase in the county district attorney salary. And so this legislation was, at least our local legislation, of course the state makes their recommendations for state Supreme Court justices in their budget process, which happens in the spring, when our county budget process happens in the fall. So every year that there is a change, we have to amend our budget to appropriate additional resources for to increase the district attorney's salary. That is, if I may interpret the vote of the legislators last month, I think that's what is upsetting to us, is that it doesn't come in conjunction with our own budget, and it doesn't come in conjunction with any type of input from the localities. Okay. So we're forced to make this increase outside of our budget process and without really any local input. So it is something that is contentious amongst most county legislators in the state, not just Lewis counties, but it is a state law, and it will eventually get passed here as well.
And it sets the salary for a district attorney is the same for every county in the state?
Depending on the Supreme Court justice that is in that region.
Okay.
Gotcha. So it's regional based. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So that will be up for a vote again on tomorrow evening?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Resolution 181. Now, this is a topic that's been going on for a little while, and it's about some upgrade to the fuel system at the highway department. So it looks like we're kind of moving forward, or they're at least going to discuss moving forward with some concept engineering, designing, and maybe awarding a contract to come up with a plan.
Yep. So we put out a request for proposals for engineering assistance with the highway fuel depot. It's an aging system, and the DEC recently changed their requirements, meaning that some of the foundational elements to that system are going to need to be updated. And it was at the point where we needed to make some updates over there anyway. So we have agreed to contract with Stantec, which is a state contractor. They have the state OGS contract for this type of work. And what they're going to do is they're going to help us build a layout for the new fuel system. They're going to help us with some key decisions in terms of the number of tanks we should have, the size of the tanks, above ground versus below ground, diesel versus gasoline, and some other environmental issues with getting the old tanks out. So they're going to be assisting us with that, and then hopefully, throughout the summer and the winter, next spring we'll have a plan in place and a bid where we can break ground on renovations to that fuel depot.
Okay, perfect. Resolution 182 is a resolution. Now, this is different than the lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers. This is to join other New York State counties in civil litigation against pharmaceutical manufacturers. Basically, this one focuses in on price fixing.
Yeah, this is one that came through the New York State Association of County Attorneys. So Joan McNichol's office has been coordinating this effort. Basically, it has to do with drug companies and collusion and price fixing for generic medications.
Okay.
So it's a class action lawsuit that many counties in New York State have voted to participate in already, and so our legislators will be deciding if that's something worth our time and effort to jump on board with.
Okay. And I guess the last issue we'll cover here, as we're getting a little shorter on time, Resolution 196, and we have received some public input on this resolution as well. So if you wanted to talk a little bit about, there's a bill in both the Assembly and the New York State Senate, sponsored by our local representatives here, so Senator Griffo in the Senate and Assemblyman Blankenbush in the Assembly. And this would be an income tax credit to landowners of snowmobile trails, if they have snowmobile trails going through their land. So obviously this is a big topic here in Lewis County, and it's something that is being put forth on the state legislative. So your resolution here is just to basically support what the lawmakers are doing on the state level?
Yeah, so our trail system in Lewis County is 100% dependent upon the private landowners that graciously allow us to set up trails through their private land. Without them, we don't have a trail system. It's that simple. And without the trail system, a lot of our economic activity generated from that would be, deeply hurt. So we've asked for years for some type of incentive program, either locally or at the state level, for folks that give us permission to operate snowmobile trails on their land.
Okay.
What the state has come up with, at least a couple of our local representatives have helped co-sponsored, is a bill that would provide an income tax rebate for landowners that have snowmobile trails on their property. And there's a formula that they've developed where every foot of snowmobile trail that's on your property translates to a certain number that could be deducted from your state income tax. So it's not a lot, but it's something that rewards those folks that really put their themselves out there for the betterment of the whole community, and provides some incentive for trail systems to grow in New York State. And as the top snowmobiling destination in all of New York State last year, this is obviously something that's important to us in Lewis County, and something that we, the legislators will have the opportunity to support at tomorrow night's meeting. Okay.
And we are kind of getting toward the end of the official state legislative session for the year. Do you know where this bill is in the process of that? Will this come up this year, or do you think this is more looking at next year?
I believe, as far as I know, it's in the Assembly right now, going through their committees. So it is a last-minute push. Every little bit counts. I know if the legislators choose to support this legislation tomorrow, then we will send a copy to all the relevant parties in Albany. Of course, that doesn't mean they always listen to us, but it's important for us to show what we value and what we'd like to see them do.
Okay. And speaking of the legislative session, and not to catch you too much off guard, but we've kind of been waiting on a local issue here since last year's legislative session.
Far too long, yeah.
We're looking for a waiver, a residency waiver for assistant district attorney that was hired last year.
Yes.
And have any updates on that, on where that stands?
It was introduced in the Senate and has made it through the committees. In the Senate, it's waiting for a full Senate vote. A same-as bill has been prepared in the Assembly. It has not made it through committees in the Assembly yet, as far as we know. Excuse me. The New York State Association of Counties, NYSAC, has been a great ally with us this session. They have been texting me every time the bill takes another step forward. So we're certainly keeping an eye on it. All expectations are that the bill will be passed towards the end of the session.
That's what we heard last year.
Well, absolutely.
Is it similar process? Last year it made it through the Senate and not through the Assembly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Last year the Assembly was the stumbling block, along with a number of other important local bills that were not were not valued and put through the process on time. So we feel this year that it will probably be bundled with a bunch of other local bills. Others, by the way, that are also asking for assistant district attorney residency waivers and a few other residency waivers. We are hopeful that they will get bundled, in the last couple days of the season and get pushed through at that time. One thing that has come up because of the issues that Lewis County has had with this position and having to go through the state is the idea of residency requirements altogether. And NISAC, we're hoping, will be working with the Senate and the Assembly over the next year or so to come up with a universal waiver so that we don't, each county, each jurisdiction doesn't have to go through this process one at a time. At this point, Lewis County would be the 20th county asking for a residency waiver. Well, there's only 60 counties, so if a third are needing these types of waivers, then it would be smart for the state legislature to pass a universal waiver to kind of get rid of that requirement. But we'll be watching it, and it would be truly disappointing and frankly an insult to Lewis County if it does not make it through this year.
Okay. And just to wrap on a few of the points that you made, again, this isn't like just a Lewis County issue. Basically, they call it home rule legislation that they tackle usually at the end of the session every year.
Correct, yeah.
Which didn't, and it wasn't just Lewis County's waivers that didn't get addressed last year. There was a lot of counties involved, like you said. And basically, if we can just speak to the importance that Lewis County is one of the smaller counties in the state population-wise, and obviously we're a rural county. So when you put out for hiring a part-time district attorney, we don't have the pool of people here that are willing to maybe necessarily accept people coming fresh out of law school or anything like that probably are looking for something more than a part-time job for one thing. And so the residency requirements and the waivers are very important to the county to be able to attract good clients. So.
And it's not like we had an option to choose a county resident and did not. We only had applicants that lived outside the county. So, and by the way, we only had less than a handful of applicants. So we really need all rural states, all rural counties, need the option of being able to reach outside our geographical boundaries to find talent for these high-level positions like assistant district attorney. So we're hopeful, and I'm confident that the state legislature will do the right thing this year and grant us the ability to fully utilize the new position that we created.
Okay. Which has been filled by a very seasoned former district attorney in Jefferson County, so it would be a
incredibly competent person that we have filling that role now. Right. She has been helping us over the last year in many ways, helping us prepare cases, helping us in trial, but she just cannot practice on her own on behalf of the county until this legislation is passed.
For sure. Okay, last topic, something that this has been going on for quite a while, and I think it was actually 2 years ago when the county did the study with Bernier and Carr.
It was 2017, and we received it in the fall of 2018, I think.
And that's for basically an analysis on the condition of the county buildings and properties, and it was at that point that the county pretty much found out that the DSS building is kind of reaching its end of life, so it either needs some major improvements or a new building altogether. So earlier this year, it seemed like there was a couple workshop sessions on the topic, and it seemed like the consensus of most of the legislators were they were ready to move forward with something. I think it was sent back to the engineers to kind of do some property check on specific locations, things like that. So a lot of that has been done behind the scenes because you don't want to give up what locations are being looked at negotiations,
Sure.
contracts, things like that. So if we could just get a little bit of an update of where that process stands
Sure.
and what you're looking at as far as the building.
So as Nick mentioned, last year, well, it began more than a year ago, but we engaged with Bernier and Carr in Watertown to do a study on the condition of our physical plant throughout the county. They studied each of our buildings and gave us a nice, 300-page report that goes through the individual issues with each, property and building structure that the county owns. From that report, there was some great discussion from the legislators that it was time to make some investments. Certainly, we had some buildings that were on towards the end of their useful life, and were on the precipice of some big investments. So, one thing that's been kicked around this county for many years at this point would be a new office building that could accommodate all of the departments under one roof. And so that is one of the options that is being considered. We again engaged with Bernier and Carr for some assistance on site location and looking at some different options of where that new structure could be built. And so the legislature will be meeting with Bernier and Carr over the course of the next month or so to go over those options that they've come up with and decide kind of continue down the road of figuring out what comes next for our physical plant. But I think everybody can agree that it's time to make some type of investments. We have some buildings that are really, really need some attention. So what the form of those investments is yet to be determined, but it's something that we're working diligently on to make sure that when we do make those investments, we've done so as efficiently, and we've thought we've had as much thought as is necessary for these decisions.
Okay, so in the short-term future, some kind of Bernier and Carr is pretty much wrapping up the process of getting their site plans or whatever together, and then that'll be presented to the legislators in private as to not violate the contracts and things like that of where you're specifically looking for a building.
Yeah, we had Bernier and Carr take a look at some specific locations, and that's not something at this point that I think the legislators are prepared to go to the public with on specific sites and specific ideas. Things are fairly nebulous at this point, but we'll be having those meetings and discussions over the course of the next month and inching our way closer towards some type of capital project decision.
Okay. So for people asking, this is just still in the works, and it's not something that's been pushed to the back burner again, because as you stated before, going back to I think like 2008, 2007, there's been talk of a new building, and it ramps up for a while, and then it kind of dissipates, and then it comes back up. So I know we hadn't talked about it in a few months. So it was
I wouldn't say it's on the back burner. I would say that we are
more behind the scenes at this.
And we're trying to be methodical and work through options and build consensus. So that would be my assessment of where things stand.
Okay.
But there's no doubt that we need to start taking these things seriously.
Okay.
So.
And you recently, I think it was in this year's budget, started it, or maybe it was last year's budget,
right.
started the capital fund, and
We did.
kind of preparing for the future.
Yeah.
And
So one thing, and just in the past, the county has not put, a organization our size, you would expect to see, 3 to 5% of your annual spend to go towards, capital improvements. And that's not always improvements. It could be just maintaining what you have.
Right.
Our typical budget has been less than 1%, and at times less than 1/2% of our whole budget has gone towards the maintenance of our facilities and investing into our physical plant. So we do need to ramp that up, and I think that's something that everyone at the county level is on board with.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so once again, the not annual meeting, the monthly meeting of the Lewis County Board of Legislators is tomorrow night, and that's Tuesday, June 4th, right here in the second floor boardroom at the courthouse here in Lavaux. So thanks for your time today,
Absolutely,
Ryan.
Nick,
As
of
always,
course.
appreciate it.
Yep.